I thought it was.
It's 6 o'clock. I'll call this regular city council meeting on Tuesday, July 26th to order. If you'll rise, we'll have an invitation call.
Thank you, Father God, for this day. Thank you for all the blessings that you've given us, and thank you for the ones that we haven't seen yet, Father. Father, clear our minds and our hearts as we conduct your business here in this town, Father. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Janine, do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Mitch, any new city employees? Are there any new employees? Next, we will consider and approve the minutes from the June 28th meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, we'll get a motion to approve the minutes as read.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Buddy. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve the monthly departmental reports. If you have a question, please identify the page. Page 21, I want to thank Mark and the volunteers for purchasing the new Striker stair chairs. For y'all doing that. Thank you for all y'all's support. '26 street sweeping. I talked to Mitch some about this today. Do we get street sweepers back where they're functional?
Yes, we're working on an AC issue now in that too.
One operational or two?
One operational. Right. Still working on the water system on that one we got as an option.
I want to draw your attention to page 32 with the water usage. Many of these questions I've talked about, but I've not bring these up publicly. Boosters pumped this month is 51,750 gallons. As Andrew had mentioned, we replaced 1,200 water meters.
About a little less than 1,100 of them.
So we're possibly getting a better read on some water, but if you look on the next page on our water history report, you'll see that we're just consecutively hitting over 50 million gallons a month. So new wells come online next week, Mitch says. At this current rate, we need 1,200 gallons a minute to sustain 24 hours a day, 1,200 gallons a minute. So it's very important to kind of be looking at that and considering possibly looking at water structure. Anybody have any questions? 34, gas report. I want to make mention of, I know there's some departments that have sent out some memos to watch the idling vehicles. If you look through and study the miles per gallon, we have a couple departments still that please be very observant of the gas prices. And I know there's instances where we have to stop and do something quick and it makes sense to leave it running, but we be mindful of idling vehicles all day and getting 4 miles a gallon. All my questions.
On the water history, just a quick question. Is it something we need to act on pretty quick, or we need to wait as far as maybe having a structure like Lubbock where certain addresses water in certain days?
Oh, you're talking about
Yeah.
rack.
Yeah.
No, not yet. I mean, that's always something we can pull out of our pocket, but, as far as the production of water, you know, communities like Seminole, places like that, they don't have the water, and they're not gonna get the water. I could see that happening, but for us, it's a matter of producing the water we have. So, to me, rationing is something that, unless we have equipment failure or something that slowed us from getting water to town, man, I just don't see a need for that just yet.
We definitely want to sell as much as we can, as our gain revenue, but on the other hand, Mike visited with this while he was still utility director, is possibly looking at odd even days, because there is some conservation that will come because of that.
Yeah.
People reset their sprinklers, but Mitch is trying to hire a new utility director, and I think hopefully we get his opinions and stuff, but the point of what I was bringing up is we're using a significant amount of water, and we need to really study how much we're able to produce, and do we need to start even talking about more wells, even though we haven't got the last two. It's just for reference as we move forward in the budget here later. There's no other questions on departmental reports. Can I get a motion to approve those?
I make a motion to approve our new reports.
Motion's made by Michael, seconded by Kenny. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve June expenses. If you have a question, please identify the page. I have another one on this. Page 62, emergency management. We bought another desktop PC. This come up pretty often. I'd like to have more information next time about, we bought a computer, if not every year, every other year. Where's our old inventory? What's the problem with it? And are we just using our line items up, or is this a need? So I'd like more investigation into that. Check it out.
On page 68, just kind of looking at some of the expenses that, you know, again, to kind of reiterate a little bit of what you were talking about as far as the wells go. You know, there's about a little over $10,000 just on some repairs on some wells and stuff. I think that's something, again, that, you know, we need to be looking at as far as the efficiency of some of these older wells, and looking at replacing them a bit more efficient submersible pumps and things and stuff like that. And, you know, again, the older stuff you get is going to end up costing a little bit more money. And that type of technology is still needed today also, but again, you want to be the same, something we need to be looking at in the future. Because it is pretty pricey repairs, and that's not just this now, it's, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely, and it's kind of getting to a point where the submersible one is a lot of times cheaper than repairing some of these turbine wells. In fact, we've replaced 2 of our turbine wells with submersible tools, less expensive. And plus, it's a lot more dependent on having submersible. So now we have these 2 new ones online. We'll have 4 of our 10 will be submersible, possible size.
10 wells total. There's no
It's
other,
been rough, so
if there's no other questions about expenses, can we get a motion to approve the June expenses?
I'll make a motion to approve the June expenses.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Kenny, seconded by Buddy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve all waste hauling expenses. Those are on page 75. If there's no questions on those, can we get a motion to approve those?
services for always doing.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Eric. Is there no other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All that abstain? One abstain. Next, we'll consider and approve an ordinance amendment. Next, we'll consider and approve an ordinance amending the Littlefield Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, Business Regulations, by adding 4.08 mobile food units. Mitch?
You have a handout from tonight. We had some changes after the package went out. After our attorney reviewed it, Brian recommended that we change just the section numbers to make it read better in the ordinance and kind of fits a little better in that 4.08. And this was a directive from earlier meeting to come up with some regulations for food trucks. I reviewed several of the different city's regulations, and this is one of the milder ones. Covers what we need to cover, I feel like, and also gives us some authority to safety and things like that. And this also has a difference from your packet ordinance that I've added a shorter period and also increased the yearly amount for food trucks to $200, and then the 72-hour permit I added would be for $50, and that part I added down there, that 72-hour permit for $50, probably need to get Brian to do a little word check, make sure I use the right wording on that, because we do want this to be able to stand up in court, some of the challenges. But hopefully we've kind of covered it. Didn't want to get too elaborate with it, but hopefully this covers what we need. It's actually fashioned after Freona's ordinance. We looked at some other bigger cities in Lubbock, and they were all really complex. We try to keep it simple.
As far as price, how do we relate? I know Lubbock's $250 a year. How about Plainview and Freon?
Don't remember what their foods were. Well, I can't imagine it being a whole lot less than that.
And the $250 a year is for
$200 a year
for the restaurants that we have
No,
local.
no, that's for any food truck.
Okay.
Now, we wouldn't charge a local food truck that sets up on their own lot that they own. That would be, but
For example, Napolito's setting up on Napolito's and Cliff Barrett setting up on his lot.
we'd consider that, that's I had it worded on here, we consider that as a fixed.
Now, do we address in this ordinance, and kind of went through it, but our kids that do fundraisers?
Yeah. Exemption. Some nonprofits in there, I think it's worded okay to cover that.
Yeah. Now, my next question is, I've noticed that some of the food trucks come on Saturday.
Mhm.
How are we collecting those?
Well, there's a rule in here where if they set up without a permit, it's a double fee. And we catch them, when we see them. Somebody comes that sets up on Saturday, if we don't see them, then they're not getting caught. Marshall's been known to go out on Saturday or Sunday and tell them they gotta get a permit.
And most of the food trucks that are coming are, I think we already know. So you
Yep.
give them a
Yeah,
heads
they're
up.
pretty easy to identify.
Yeah,
most of the time.
well, no, but I think you give them a heads up and say, hey, if you're coming on Saturday, you need to be coming on Friday.
So they can get some kind of placard that they'll put in at 2022 Littlefield.
Yeah, we'll have a little, little stick on it or sticker or something that just says you're approved. In fact, a little over a year ago, they passed the rules, I guess, maybe a year ago, they passed the rules mobile food units. And so this refers to the Department of State Health Services and their regulations that they have to follow. And if you study those, they're pretty heavy. So these food trucks to get their health certificate and stuff have to be, pass those rules. And they have to have a copy of their sales tax license too.
And does the fire marshal have to check anything out on them too? There's a setback from building.
Yeah, there's also some stuff that kind of come into play there on fire extinguishers that I can't remember what all, but it's got a few things in the state code about fire extinguishers.
So who's checking that, marshal and everybody while they're getting their permits?
Jamie will have to check that, or Marshall will be able to, I guess, to see if they got some of the basic stuff. They've been known to both look at these things.
What about on the hours of operation, it says, no mobile food units shall operate between the hours of 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Was that, like, say, for like shift change and stuff, if you're going down to it, it comes in,
I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of set up for 2 a.m.
I mean,
But
I'm looking at the 6 a.m., I'm just saying for 2 a.m., but I'm just saying that some of the guys might be in there, coming in at, the shift change and
It's
stuff.
for the city of Littlefield, the mill plant's
Good.
not the city.
But it sets me inside the city of Littlefield, and people are traveling in from work, and going, like some guys will go to McDonald's and get a breakfast or whatever. And I'm not saying that I've seen any right now doing that, but,
I haven't yet had a food truck. I haven't seen one set up for yet, but that's a local rule, that's not state. The state rules say that locally you can set those hours.
We want to later address that. If that becomes an issue, we may need to consider lighting and traffic and visibility. I mean, it's.
yeah, I agree, I just think, there's a possibility it might come up in the future.
There's no other questions. Can we get a motion to approve this new ordinance?
I'll make a motion to approve amending the Louisville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, Businesses Regulation by adding Article 4.08, mobile food unit.
Second.
Motion made by Kenny, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve the sale of the trust property, parcel ID 20565. The winning bidder is Trevor and Bridget Jennings for a bid amount of $800, and this property is located on Third, West Third.
940 was the,
Asking Mitch earlier, this is one that these people came, wanted to put a manufactured home on, identified a lot, put it up for auction on their winning bidder. Is that accurate?
yes, yeah, they're new, actually, they're here because of a job created through.
So that's what the program's working and selling to people that are gonna do something with it, hopefully. There's no objections. Can we get a motion to approve that sale?
I make a motion to approve the sale of the trust property, ID number 2565.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Buddy. Is there any further discussion? None, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. We'll give this, we'll give number 12 a little more time to see if this guy shows up for his appeal. Next, we'll move on to skip 12 for now. Janine, we'll get it. 13, considering approving the changes to the 2023 Texas Parks and Wildlife Department park grant application. Mitch?
Mayor, as promised, and not much when to do it here because this is due August 1st, but wanted to give y'all one last shot here to make any changes. Just keep in mind, with Nichols and with Spag a couple of times on this in the park, and we came up with I think, a pretty nice little layout here. Bear in mind, the main thrust of this grant application is to dredge out those pond, or that pond within it, to handle the water a little better, and, you know, help us with our mosquito problem and stuff. But this is a naturally filling up pond, so it has water in it now. There will be times when there's no water, but the Parks and Wildlife and SPAG and engineers are all in agreement. That's just kind of the cycle. You don't want to pump water out of you know, public water into a pond or something like that. So there's a list there on page 107 showing the priority as we see it, collecting letters of support from different places, and we may have some match money located, and we can also do some in-kind work where, you know, we may like tear down the old park building, or the old park storage building out there, and some other stuff that we can count money toward the match on this park. But
So what is it you're needing?
nothing. If y'all have any comments, just make them, and I can get that over to the engineer. And they're still closing in on getting the cost estimates of each one of these things. Very possible we can't, you know, we may not even go down to number 5 maybe, you know, but these are all of the things that we saw that could be a positive thing, and so we just prioritize them and put them in this schedule.
So that's what we're gonna ask Parks and Wildlife for?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you need to approve that plan? Nope. Does anybody have any changes to this plan they'd like to see?
What is this gonna do to the current Frisbee golf course thing?
Shouldn't affect it. Matter of fact, I should be getting a letter of support from them. They like the idea of water hazard.
Okay.
I guess it's rare almost, but they're a pretty tested group. I mean, they have several tournaments each year, and they're pretty good local.
What about right there? What about right there between South Park Avenue and South Lake on, what is it, 6th Street? There's a little, it cuts into the park area pretty good where that water runs. What's your plans on that right there where I guess they put a drain?
Where's your
We've
proposed?
actually got
I didn't see nothing on there for that part right there, but everything else, I mean, looks fine, but it's just that little area. We are gonna put river rock, concrete, what was gonna try to go right there and then.
right in there, I figured there'll be some like riprap rock or something in that little green section you see
Yes.
there is a bridge.
Uh-huh.
And locally, we've had one built that was way too big for what purposes we have. That that might be one of our, in-kind local things we might want to do is get these 3 bridges built to line up with a jogging path or walking path. I would think this would be more of a natural type path with some wrap material or something that we just come in periodically and just trim the weeds out on it, smooth it up occasionally. But then those crossovers would be really neat with these just metal bridges similar to what's on the north side of President's, except a lot smaller. Just a little bit narrower than the golf cart.
Are there any changes to this we need to make? If not, we'll let the plan stand approved as submitted. No changes? Moving on. Right, what's needed?
Yes.
Next, we will 14, consider and approve an agreement between the city of Littlefield EMS and the city of Anton. This is a yearly deal. You'll see the prices change. That's due to the number of call volume. That's all tied to the call volume, so that price will increase. Are there any questions on that? If not, we get a motion to approve that.
That we consider fuel costs in this monitor.
Yes, sir, we have a substantial increase from what we're receiving over there. It should more than cover any increase that we've had in fuel costs. Yes,
Okay. Good.
Entertain a motion to approve this agreement.
I make a motion we approve the interlocal agreement with the EMS City of Adams.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny. Is there any further discussion? None, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Next, we'll consider and approve an agreement between the City of Littlefield EMS and Hartford County. As you'll also see, that price is substantially increased due to the call volume. If there's no questions, we'll get a motion to approve that.
Make a motion to approve the agreement between the city of Littlefield, EMS, and Hopkins County.
Second. Motion's been made by Kenny, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? None, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll have a public hearing regarding a request for zone change from C1 light commercial to C2 general commercial. Mitch, will give us a rundown before we go into public hearing.
This is some property back behind Dixie's Two Restaurants to the east. It's the former Grimes Body Shop and some open area. We've done this on a couple occasions around town, change C1 to C2 to allow some more commercial type uses. It doesn't front on any major roads, so it's not a high visibility up front thing. Robert Montanez has applied for this with the help of the Grimes, who are the current owners, but I believe they have a contract with contingency for the zone change. So that's about it. Got a map in your handout, shows the location of it.
And planning and zoning is requested as approved this, correct?
Yes, planning and zoning is what you need approval of this.
Basically, you're ratifying P and Z's decision they've already approved this zone change last week, and so you're ratifying their decision. At this time, I'll close the regular city council meeting to open the public hearing on this item. If you have a comment, please approach the diocese, give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Nobody here speaking on it? I will now close this public hearing and reopen the regular city council meeting. Moving on to number 17, considering and approving the ordinance amending the zoning ordinance. Basically, as Mitch said, this is ratifying PNC's decision for that zoning change from C1 to C2. Is there any discussion? Questions? If not, we entertain a motion to approve PNC's decision and approve this ordinance.
Make a motion we approve this zoning change that P&Z has already approved.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Buddy. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve a submission of a qualified person for election as board trustee of Region 3 Juvenile Health Benefits Pool.
Elena Neal from Ransom Canyon, she's our city manager, and she called us, politicking to be reappointed to the health benefits pool. I think anybody that wants to do that should get all the support they want. So I think she's done us a good job for the region. She's very qualified, so I recommend that we cast our vote.
So your motion is gonna be to, submit, Elena Quintanilla for this position. Make a motion, we submit Elena Quintanilla for this representative.
Second.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion carries. Make sure we get a new president. Yes, sir. We are. All right, so we'll now do presentation of certified appraisal. Mitch?
We just received, yesterday we received a certified price roll, really not much to it other than just receiving this. And we really can't get into a lot of discussion on taxes without posting a meeting, but it looks like about 17 million additional valuation going on the tax roll within the city limits. And that'll all be taken into consideration as we move forward in improving our budget and levying a tax later on.
Thank you. Any questions on this additional supplement? We'll be getting into the tax rate later, so to stay in line with the truth and taxation laws, we'll move on. Presentation, we're going to not do 22 for now, or 21. It's 30 minutes past, time's up. Number 12, considering to take appropriate action on appeal of Planning and Zoning Commission's denial of special use request to allow travel trailer park at Littlefield Motel, 201 East Marshall Tire Boulevard. Want to remind everybody this is a procedural hearing. They applied for an appeal, as you've seen in your packet. We don't have the latitude to negotiate this. It's simply upholding P&Z's recommendation or overturning it, which requires a supermajority. Any questions on that? If not, we will need to take action on this deal. I make a motion we uphold P&Z's denial of this special use.
Second.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Kenny. Is there further discussion? No questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. Skipping 20 and 21, we're going to try to give Brian a head start home. We're going to go into executive session regarding economic development, business prospect incentive under Texas Government Code 551.087. If the council, city manager, attorney, and economic development director will join us.
Can you read those if I may?
Yeah, he's white to leave.
6:57, we have returned from executive session where no action was taken. We will now, 23, consider and approve action regarding business prospect initiative. Is there a motion?
Excuse me, I'll make a motion that we approve the LEDC project for Stanley Center, a $200,000 forgivable loan for 5 years and 10 jobs.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made by Kenny, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? None, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next, we will have executive session regarding TCQ and water-related matters, Texas Government Code 551.071. Council and Michael, since you were previous utility director, would you like to 7:38, we have returned from executive session where no action was taken. Next, we will consider and approve appropriate action regarding TCQ. Make a motion that we authorize the city manager to further negotiate this agreed order
Second.
and to apply for a variance of the system. Second, Michael?
Yes.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 20 and 21 is all we have left, so Brian, I think unless you want to stick around for the vote.
Come on, Brian. Well, I'll get that
Thanks, sir.
Dear.
Next, we will have a presentation of the proposed 2022-23 fiscal year budget. Mitch?
In your packet, in a separate binder, is first run of the budget. I want to make my usual little speech at first. This is the most important thing you'll do as a council member, is to set our budget. And the budget is our spending plan for the year and determines what we do and fuels our services that we provide to the public. So it's a very important thing. It's your budget, and I'm the budget officer. So as we go through this thing, you might make notes or just ask questions as you go and give me direction to further develop this budget. And there's a lot of things in this budget that we're not finished with. We're not far long enough in the year to have accurate enough estimates. We have estimates in there, but as we get closer, we'll be fine tuning those. Another thing is beginning and ending balances. Those are not accurate yet. And I'll go through this thing and just talk about the highlights mainly of the differences between last year and this year, and maybe give you a little idea of how this budget's laid out and things to be looking for on it. Kind of before we start, you'll see 4 columns as you go through the budget, starting on page 4 with revenue. And those are, state law requires that you show 3 years of budget. And what we typically do, what most cities do, is you'll have last year's actual, this year's budget and the estimate of how you'll finish up this year, and then a proposed budget for next year. And of course, it starts October 1st and ends September 30th each year. So kind of get started on this thing, and
Keep in mind, this agenda is presentation, so it's going over your notes, and then we'll move into discussion wherever you want to break that.
yeah, I'll go over the highlights, and then we can kind of focus on different sections that we need to discuss. One of the things we're dealing with, one of the big highlights is salary. And with the cost of living going up and everything, over the years we've focused on different departments without just across the board. We kind of focus on the departments that we feel are lagging behind on pay for retaining our good employees and stuff. And so what I've got in here is we've got a focus mainly on public works, on overall pay. I have a 5 to 10% increase for directors. And then I also have the continuation of our step and grade program that we've had in for 5 or so years, which amounts to 2% merit increase at their anniversary day, depending on their satisfactory performance in those departments. In the general fund, we're seeing some pluses there on our sales tax revenue. I think for the last 4 months, we've had record high revenue from sales tax. Some of this is from inflation, and some of it is just from some, I feel like, some confidence in consumers and our retail businesses around town. I have no fee changes, tax revenue, or I have not included any kind of increase in rates or anything, no tax increases or anything in this copy of the budget. So that's up for discussion later if you think we need to look at some increases here and there. In the general fund, we included a price increase on fuel of 20 to 40%. That's included. And administrative cost was a pretty good increase on that from the increase y'all gave me last year that we've not amended this budget yet for this current year. But that new line item will be higher because of that increase y'all gave me last year. Police department, not much change, but I think later on I'm going to recommend that you seriously look at replacing 2 or 3 cruisers. I wish I knew what they were going to look like or how much they were going to cost, but we do know we need to look at replacing some of our older units for the PD. And the fire department, got a small item. I mean, that's up for discussion later on if y'all want to look at this. James found a service. It's kind of a new and different thing where they'll test your hydrants and do a little maintenance on them and get some needed data from those hydrants so that we can put that data in our resource so that when we fight a fire, hopefully we won't be opening a hydrant that very little water comes out of it. So also that's a requirement that our insurance rating agency wants us to do. It's something I think would be a big plus for us. But definitely not a have-to thing. In refuse, at the landfill, we have some reductions. Track loader, we made our last payment, so that payment goes away. And also, we're not thinking we need to do the pit this year. And we still got some pit space left, and that new compactor's doing a good job of getting the best use of our landfill space. On shared costs, we've got a little bit of increase. We anticipate probably having to do what they call a single audit for grant money because we've taken in so much grant money this current year. We'll be way over the capacity for what triggers a separate audit. I've never had to do one, but we think this year the audit will have to include a single audit because we've taken in way more than $750,000 grant money. And we also figured on some additional costs and shared costs for utility costs. One thing I've got in there for fleet services is a brake lathe, and it's definitely not a really high priority. We've just lost our resources in town for being able to get our brakes worked on, and this is an attempt to try to not have to go out of town to get brakes worked on or have to order new ones.
This is for small cars or trash trucks or what?
I believe you could do pretty much anything. Is that right, man?
Oh, that one. It's just for the water trucks and.
Like the pickups,
Yeah.
$14,000 lots of brake rotors.
That's exactly what I thought.
$14,000 lots of brake rotors.
Yeah. Well, the reason for that, we're running out of people that actually turn them.
Yeah.
And
About
we're having
the
to
actual cost
replace them and,
to pay somebody to do it and what the rotors cost.
yeah.
Definitely not super high priority on that. Also higher diesel costs and, for EMS and, I believe, what's your date you think you'll get the ambulance?
December-ish.
And that, the $264,000 expenditure that is offset with some grant money from Glenn County, but $10,000 a year subsidy that they give us. And that, we accumulate that in a grant fund and it goes toward purchase of those ambulances periodically. License enforcement, this is one of the rare cases where I think we need to add an employee. Or a matter of fact, we've stolen an employee from Public Works, and he's been working almost full time in the animal control and codes licensing enforcement section of the budget. And I gotta say, they're doing a really good job of handling the animals and doing the code enforcement stuff. It's something I think we really need to look at, adding an employee on that. I hate to add employees, but this is a case where we just have to gear up for this stuff, because we have a lot of things that we need to be enforcing better, and something we need to look at. Public Works, that's a big story. We've got another $750,000 for seal coat in there. That'll do probably another 30% of the town. We don't have the area picked out yet, but we did extensive mapping of the conditions of the streets in town, and we'll use those to kind of analyze, if the budget's passed, we'll analyze those and get that back to you for your decision on where to do the next seal coating area. In the utility fund revenues, we're very conservative with our estimate on water sales, because, a dry year and a wet year will make a lot difference, a lot bigger difference than change in rates. And you have a huge swing between a wet year and a dry year. And so we just kind of keep the same amount, even though our water sales are just ratcheting up and up and up. A lot of that has to do with more water use at the milk plant, dehydration plant. And they did tell us that they were using more water, and we're definitely seeing it come into play. Now, generally speaking, on revenue, if you do want to look at that later, 25 cents on a water rate would bring about 150,000 additional revenue in, and $1 on the base for water or sewer would bring in about 25,000 a year additional revenue. Those are some building blocks that you can look at. In the utility fund expenses, we've got $50,000 budgeted that we could not spend this year for a new service truck in the water and in wastewater. And we've moved those over to next year because the way things are going, it doesn't look like we'll be able to spend that money for new vehicles for the utility in this fiscal year. So we hope that we can do it next fiscal year. In capital improvements, I've got some sheets in there. I hope I included all of them that I received, but I've got notes on those at the back of the budget that say what's in and what's out. I did not put very many capital items in the budget, just very few things. So, just kind of looking at the big picture of this budget, we're $500,000 in the negative, and the majority of that is because of the huge seal coat that we're doing again this year. to reduce that to a normal seal coat of say 200,000, that puts us a little bit in the black. If you took that out, it would make us kind of in the black. My estimation is we're getting a little close to I think we need a little bit of a cushion. So something you definitely want to look at later on is possibly increasing some rates. I hate to say it, but the inflation, runaway inflation is just something that's affecting us, and you know, whether it's replacing a part on the vehicle or a piece of pipe, utility, I mean, these costs, they add up, and they just go up and up.
So you've heard, are you done, President? You've heard the presentation of the proposed budget. Next, we will have a discussion of the proposed budget. As this is many years in the past, if you go through some things, you have a project that you want, or you see things in this budget, if you'll let Mitch know we need to have more budget workshops. You know, let's give him some ideas of what's important to y'all. Let them go back and get us some numbers and some plans. You know, not that we have to make decisions tonight. Tonight is about going through here, answering questions you have, letting him know if you have priorities so that they can go back, and then at a future budget meeting, we can deliberate on those and come forward. So at this time, we'll go to agenda 21, discuss proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. As you'll see in the capital improvement plan, we're looking at 2023 budget. As you look on page 32, as you cruise down that line, you'll see what's in those capital improvement plans. Keep in mind that $193,000 for a side loader was pushed from this year. There'll be a savings this year. It's getting pushed forward, as is the $100,000 for 2 water and wastewater pickups. And then the meter deal's been in there for a while, so he hasn't put much capital improvements in here yet.
You know, that's the only thing that really hits the bottom line much is the meter finishing hopefully we finish the AMR operation with automatic meter reading. You think we'll finish this next round? You're close, probably.
I'm not sure yet.
Close. 2 pickups, and that's really about it. Mike, do you remember why we put that 100,000 in the repair water tower? I can't remember. But I've got it in there in the $100,000 capital improvement this year for water tower.
That was for whenever we get the video and everything of them checking the towers. If there's something that they have to go farther, that's
But
what that money would.
they looked good though. They don't look on the
We don't
repairs
have
that we
that's back yet.
It's
We just got them
finished
done last
inspection,
week.
So that 100,000 right there is something that came out if we needed to. But there may be other things we didn't.
I hate this time of year the most, but it's also the most important thing. One thing in discussion with Andrew, if you'll think back, when we sold before we sold the prison a few years ago, which the revenue off the leases was not counted into our income. We had approximately, going back 3 years, we were 500 to 600. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. We had 500,000 or 600,000 of positive variance in our budget. We add in meter programs, capital improvements. We were doing about $300,000 a year. We were running until this year $200,000 to $300,000 budget surpluses. If you'll notice, the seal coat deal is hard to cipher through, and like Mitch said, if you take that out, we've been putting $100,000 in there every year for years and years and years. It needs to be 200. There has to be some number in there. The seal coat throws it off and makes you think, well, it's fine. It's just because of these big expenses. Our margin is shrinking. Our revenue is increasing, but not fast as our expenses are. And our expenses, as you can see in here, is going up substantially. It's probably time to start talking about some revenue generating activities. Another comment is in discussion with Andrew Andrew and I have spent a lot of discussion over the years working on budgets. We've went from the period of being, you can't spend any money, department heads, just bare bones minimum, to, you know, fix what needs fixed. I think it's important we revisit, probably Andrew and Mitch, with department heads of, are there some line items in here that we gave 1 year to buy something that's not being used and it's just getting pushed forward, and now you got a little envelope of money you can use? I think we really need to get diligent on looking at our expenses in every department, as the cost has just accelerated substantially. And so that would be one challenge I'd have for him, is to go back and go with department heads, which I think y'all already had some meetings, I don't know, but are we really, is there anything, any areas that we can cut some line items? The tax rate, we can't really talk about today, correct? So we can't really talk about tax rate. You'll have that decision to make upon, we've got to follow truth in taxation on that. You're going to have a decision with tax rate as you come up. Keep in mind the school board passing that bond is substantial. You need to keep that in mind when looking at the tax rate. We haven't raised utility rates in 5 or 6 years now. When we last raised our utility rates, because y'all, I'm not sure everybody was here at that time, we took a major increase to the base rate, because what the problem was previously is we had customers in different parts of town that just said, I don't want a yard, don't care about a yard, and they were having $56 a month utility bills. Well, I don't care if you water your yard or not, you still have to pay enough to have this service of having water, sewer, and trash. So what we did was raise the base rates up to where I think the lowest base rate is like $95. So to be on city water, sewer, and trash, you have $95 now. And the additional usage, if you want to plant the Garden of Eden in your backyard, you can do it for a nominal fee of $3.50 per 1,000 gallons. So what we try to do is equalize where everybody pays to have this availability of the service. But it's probably time to look at possibly some refuse rates, tonnage-wise, and then some water rates. I mean, cost of production, we spent $800,000 drilling 2 wells. How much of that is that worth? I mean, do the math on that. $3.50 is pretty cheap water. I don't want to hog this conversation, so stop at any time. On going through there, there's a big administrative thing that we need to look at. We need to test them. We have a contract with Hanson Scarborough. We hired them years ago in 2015 to put the prison deal together. They more than earned their keep on that. They're probably a large part of why we got the $750,000 swimming pool grant. We're paying them $30,000 a year for lobbying. I think we're about to test them out on TCQ some, but that contract ends December, what? In December something. And we need to decide if we want to continue that $30,000. If we say they're giving us the best rate of anybody, probably are, but it's a lot of money. And are we fully utilizing that? That would be one item. Okay. Would y'all agree that maybe we go through Mitch's highlight? Do y'all have any specific comments on, just to make it easy, because these are mainly the additions he's made, is if we go through, I think the most effective way, instead of going page by page, unless you have specific questions, is going through his highlights, get some direction from that. Next, if you have any projects you want to look at, give them that direction. And then third is lastly, going through the capital improvements and seeing which is important. So overall pay, as you all know, wages have increased dramatically across. We're getting where we can't hire people anymore and potentially losing people. Y'all made some adjustments. And
this budget, we try to focus pretty much on the lower paid public works folks. What would you say the percentage we looked at on public works, just workers?
About 4%.
4%.
I would like to, before we talk further about salaries, one thing that's not in here is the step and grade schedule, and the salaries deals. It's important to see. I would like to, I don't know about looking at other cities, but I think it's important to, public works is public works, water is water. I mean, when you're getting paid $14 to work at a restaurant and $12 to operate $1 million piece of equipment, we got to be relative here. Can't get a trash truck driver. Why would a CDL driver come work for us for $18 when we go to oil field for $30? I mean, we got to look at some of that. I think I would like to see something on not only cities, but some salaries in the area. What are police officers making in comparable cities? What are EMS people making? Public works directors? I would like to see a salary comparison. And I think some of that, we may be the leading edge, we may be behind, I don't know, but I don't think we can make accurate decisions until we see what our neighbors are doing. And then also, all of us work in the job market or have employees and know what it's costing to have people. And I think we need to kind of see that step and grade and some comparisons before we make the final decision. General revenues, sales tax being very conservative. Tax revenue we'll talk about next time at the appropriate time. Fuel prices, you've got administrative, salaries, police. Police in here, he does not have that in the capital improvement. It's on his notes. He did not put it in here to give us the option. And Mitch made a good justification for this earlier. He said, I didn't want to load up the capital improvement and bring y'all a negative $2 million budget, and then y'all just start firing people. So you've got to make some decisions today. But we've kicked the can on police cruisers for a while. I think the last discussion I've heard is they're looking at four-door pickups. Is that
Yes,
correct? It's four-door pickups. And I know the police chief is studying, is there a possibility to reduce from 13 cars to 8 cars or 6 cars? You know, he's studying that. I would like to know more if there's I'd like to know if there's an option on these police vehicles. The police is the biggest fleet we have of cars in one department. I would like to see y'all bring forward, here's your options. We can have 13 and trade them every 4 years, or we can get 6 of them and trade them every 12 months. I mean, bring forth some options as do we need 13 cars? But also bring forth some options on what it is. Is this a $60,000 car outfitted, or is this a $30,000 car? We can't approve 3 police vehicles if we don't know what they cost. What are y'all's thoughts on police cruisers?
I think we need them, or at least put some money into our current fleet.
Or do like y'all talked about when the rotation, 4 years, I know that mentioned a while back too.
The only thing is right now is you can't find
Yeah,
vehicles.
but if they change the trucks now, what is the deal on trucks? Is they still hard to find too, chief?
Trucks are actually easier to find. What the mayor and I had discussed was getting white trucks. That way, if they outlive their usefulness as far as police vehicles go, they could be maybe sent to a different department, unstrapped and sent to a different department. That way, there'd be more longevity.
And I'd like to look at, I don't know what all the police car needs on it, but is there a way we can minimize with wrapping, and can we get something that's more of a consumer vehicle with nice wheels and stuff on it, it's got some resellability without poking a lot of holes in it and stuff?
I don't really want consumer wheels on a police vehicle.
I understand, but I mean, just kind of if y'all will bring forth here's what we'd like to get, here's an option. Dodge Durango, Corvettes, bring forth some options of what it's going to be and how much they're going to cost and the outfitting with a police car. And is there an option for a smaller fleet that trades every other year, or do we get 13 of them and just know that we're going to have them for 4 years? So I think everybody here would be in agreement that we need to look at 3. On a 3-year, there's 12 cars. If we did 3 a year, we're basically to the point where over the next 4 years, we've got to buy 3 cars a year to keep up with our fleet. But
I look at trade-ins too.
and trade-in values, we need to know that. So not just willy-nilly, I mean, we're gonna have another meeting, but we need to have numbers and real, I know some of this is subjective to the market, but, so everybody here is in favor of looking at 2 to 3 police cruisers, depending on what we can find. Fire added 7,500 for hydrant testing. What Mitch said of this is something to prepare for the ISO, to get some actual, not just do they turn on or turn off, but this neighborhood flows this many gallons and that stuff.
That's to test all the hydrants in town?
Yeah, I need to do some more investigation on it. The chief sent me a contact and they had done like a real overview of a cost they would charge. There's some hourly stuff that might come into play too, but I mean, something you could do at your own pace. You know, you could say, okay, we're gonna do part this year, part next year, but this is a little more in-depth testing, like the mayor said, than just turn it on and make sure it works. That's something we're kind of in the middle of right now. We've got a pretty good portion of them just turned on to see if they'll turn on, but
Out of how many ever fire hydrants, what % complete are we knowing which one's working, which one's don't?
probably third, maybe, or half. How far are we along with our testing, just turning them on?
Oh, we're well over 2/3.
Or
How many hydrants do we have?
186?
186?
My comments on this is, I don't have a problem having somebody come in, get them working, identify what's wrong, we need to replace these 3. I have a big problem with this being a continual operation, I think this is a public works and fire department duty to make sure it works. And, you know, I don't have a problem bringing someone in to get stuff caught up and tested and prepared for ISO, but this would not be something I'd be in favor of doing yearly. I think it needs to be checked yearly, but,
It's kind of doing a different thing. I don't know of anybody ever having that service in the past,
so
so
let's hear more about it before we decide on it.
we'll
Landfill reduction, one of the comments with this is the track loader has 6,100 hours. It was bought new about 5 years ago. We know what kind of chaos it creates with when the landfill doesn't work. It's something that's going to have to be addressed on a trade-in sooner or later, but not necessarily has to be done right now, but in the next, before we get to the old days of where it's working really good, right, Lance? I mean, this track loader is without small minor repairs, and we're on that John Deere maintenance deal where they do the maintenance, right? And that's worked brilliantly. So no concerns immediately for that.
No, not immediately.
So, not a
That was a
priority.
good move for John Deere, making this thing.
Not a priority, but if y'all don't want to address that this year, it is going to be something in the next year or two that you're going to need to address. Shared cost audit, blah, 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 brake lathe, lots of discussion on $14,000 brake lathe. I think it's kind of goofy.
No,
I mean, I get it, want to be able to work on it, but
Even $100.
definitely not something we're following sword for.
Do what? Even if you bought like really expensive rotors at $100 a piece, that's 40 rotors.
Well, yeah,
That's a lot of rotors.
Well, one of the things that comes into play too is, say you have somebody leave and you don't have somebody running.
the problem is,
I
Lance,
didn't do justice to Lance here. I don't think it was as priority as what I thought when I put it in there.
there's nobody in town that turns rotors anymore.
O'Reilly's, when theirs is working.
But almost like rotors have gotten cheap enough, like
They
the cost of turning versus buying new and having longer.
If you don't know what you're doing as far as turning a rotor, you're gonna mess it up, and it's just gonna cost you more money in the long run. anyway.
Doesn't Clinton turn his rotors? But
I think he does for his vehicle. I don't think he does it like commercially.
Is everybody in favor of taking that out?
yeah,
EMS, ambulance, that's scheduled, license enforcement, licensing and enforcement being animal control and code enforcement has been a dumpster fire ever since I've been involved in the city. And for the first time, it's finally running really good.
It's doing good, but we will maintain, and we want to add to, and there's a lot.
Wait,
I think we could write tickets to 30 people in
yeah,
town.
but wait.
Yeah.
So do we currently have,
30% right now.
do we currently have 2 animal control officers,
You always see two.
and you want to add a third?
No, I want to, well, no, what I want to do is that one that we've been that's just been helping out with animal control is actually a public works employee.
So what do we have? We
So
have,
what we'd like to do is start paying him out of animal control and let Lance fill his open spot.
who do we have? We have
Corey,
Marshall.
Eric, or basically animal control, and then Marshall's doing all the code. What I want to do is have Eric training as a backup for code with Marshall, because frankly, Marshall can't cover all the places.
So basically, he have the people, he's not wanting to add to, he's wanting to change where Public Works is.
I want to start paying Eric out of license and enforcement instead of public works, so Lance can fill his open spot, because his guys are hitting the high spots right
Everybody in favor of that?
Well, I'm still confused because I see 2 people in the truck and it says code enforcement. Is that, do we have 2 people in one truck?
now. Well, sometimes I think they might ride together if they're doing something they both
I
have
see
to
it pretty often
do.
too.
Huh?
I see it pretty often too.
We
Yeah,
just, we
that's-
just replaced,
We don't need a buddy. We don't need a partner for that.
Well, that, I guess that's my question. Why is there 2 in the truck and it says, and the truck says code enforcement, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I can't tell you why there might be 2. I could see a situation where you might need to take 2 to catch a dog.
Well-
Those dogs are pretty tricky. But there's some instances where they may have a truck that's down too.
But the other problem is, correct me if I'm wrong, we only have 2 pickups in code enforcement, is that correct?
We got 3 now. just
We pulled one out of retirement.
Pulled one out of retirement.
Yeah.
But and Michael's got a very good point, is the animal control is more of a duo than 2 people working. It's more of a 2 people together working. And there's instances for that, but if we're gonna keep.
Yes
that
and
on-
no, but there's one thing I want to do that we haven't done in the past. Is I need to kind of alternate them on schedules, because people go at 5 o'clock and they turn their dogs loose, and they let them run all weekend, and they cause havoc and get 8 dogs at Sonic chasing people around. So if we can have that person come in later on a certain day and then work, Saturdays and stuff to cover some shifts. It's more than 8 to 5 days a week.
According to
And
Facebook,
I'd like for them to say, go home half a day and then come back and work half a day. But they spend a lot of the day just cleaning out the pens, because there's a lot of work to that.
What are you saying, Billy?
According to Facebook, they're already doing like an evening shift. They put that on Facebook a couple weeks ago.
That's why I want to keep it. Basically, by adding this position, I'll be able to pay Eric from licensing and enforcement. Right now, he's paid out of public works.
And Lance is short guy.
I want to fill that spot, but we're not adding people that are not on.
Yeah,
payroll.
what we're talking about though, we don't want to make sure like 2 people ain't doing the job of 1 person.
No.
And 'cause I see it pretty often, they're riding the same pickup.
Well, what I want to do is, I want Eric to start doing some code stuff, highways, junk cars, things like that, and learning some of that, because the way the code enforcement law is for the state, now to get that license, you have to work under a code enforcement person for a year. And we got to start logging some time where he's doing that, because one of these days Marshall's going to retire.
What I'm hearing,
And we're hurting.
what I'm hearing the council saying is nobody here is opposed to this extra person. What we are conscientious of is we don't want to pay for a friend for one of our employees. We need this person going out and doing their own duties and all this stuff, so.
Or one person cleaning the shelter, one person's out picking it up.
Is
Very
that
much what they do.
everybody's kind of in favor of, is we're okay with this, but we just need to make sure we're not, everybody's got duties. Is that right, Mike?
That's right.
That's right.
And not to complain or anything, but there's times I see a city vehicle at home at 4:30. I've never said anything about it, because I don't know if that person had a doctor's appointment or,
Went to work at 7.
and went to work at 7 or whatever. So, we gotta be mindful of
That brings up a good point. As we're talking about salary increases, we've had this discussion too. The department heads and the city manager overlooking it all. We're gonna have to pay people better. We're also gonna have to demand better results. We don't need deadwood that we're paying $15 an hour to. If we're gonna pay, if you're gonna work here, we're gonna pay you good, but you're gonna work. And so it's gonna be a management deal for all of you too. We don't mind paying people better, but we need to make sure we're not overstaffed and that everybody's doing their job.
and that they're working whatever schedule the manager or supervisors or whatever has to go forth. Okay? I mean, I don't want nothing to nitpick, but
Yeah.
sometimes, like I said, I see vehicles home at 4:30. And I don't say nothing because, like I said, I don't know, that person had a doctor's appointment,
Well,
maybe.
if you see something that don't look right, call me
Well,
anytime, because
I
that's,
just,
I mean, more eyes out there, the better. I need to.
well, I drive around a lot, so.
I need to hear if you see
Yeah.
something like that, because we're gonna check it out and make sure, because, I mean, there's a lot of situations that happen, like, for instance, somebody may have worked through lunch, somebody may have started it. I know my trash truck drivers, they started
Yeah.
30 or 70.
Yeah, and that's understandable. I just wanted to make sure that they're working the schedule.
Make sure that.
Public Works has a seal coat project, $750,000. This is basically got pooled cash to fix the 10 years of neglect. Is everybody in favor of continuing that project to try to get around town? You know, if we get this done in 3 years, we're gonna be able to back this off, or, you know, get back to the very.
So this will be our second year?
Well, we've done $100,000 projects twice, and they just don't cover very much. And then the last one was $750,000. So all total, we spent almost $1 million on zip code.
And we've got a large portion. I mean,
We've still probably got 60%, maybe even 70%. And we addressed what we thought was the worst of the streets, so.
there's still a lot after that rain.
I gotta say, the biggest challenge trying to do this is, they moved this earlier in the year, they wanna do it before school's even out. And it makes it a huge challenge to cover that area of traffic with the seal coating. And there's not much of an option, because if you don't bid it and let them start early, you won't get any bidder.
I understand. So everybody in favor of continuing, trying to get caught up?
Yeah.
Utility fund revenues, I would like to see a plan, I don't know if y'all type up for your opinion. We need to have a spreadsheet of what our current rates are. We need to have some options of base rate, this is gonna do this, water rates is gonna do this for every 5 cents or 10 cents a quarter, whatever. So summarize that and let us, and we also, in that, let's get another pool from our neighbors and see what everybody else in the region is charging for some of this, so we can compare to other cities. Is everybody okay with looking at that? Utility fund expenses, is everybody still in favor of keeping those pickups in there, so even though we haven't been able to buy them?
Yeah.
Capital improvements, 5 years. Well, before we move on to, we can do it in conjunction. Does anybody have any particular projects that y'all are interested in apart? We're doing the big deal at Laguna. Does anybody have any pet projects there?
Like to see a better water system at the Crescent Park.
Possibly some well water or something.
I did talk to the sheriff's department, and they went to that pod system, and they said that before they were running like 3 strands of pipe, and now they run 11 sprinklers. Off the same pressure.
It's been a conversation for a while, and not that we want to water the entire park, but it's better.
Well, no, like yesterday, we have the news there, and it didn't look very good.
We'd like to explore some options with how we can better water that park. Any other projects? Capital improvements, let's go ahead and get into that, this may be somebody's project. Before we get into that, does anybody have any particular things in specific departments? We brought up this Hanson Scarborough deal, what's y'all's opinion on that?
So you said we on this next deal, but I guess we can't wait for then, huh?
We can, but we don't have to renew the contract. We could budget it and not renew the contract. But our idea was we'd probably, once we sold the prison, get rid of them, but then we haven't because, well, we don't want to do anything legislatively that could be having them sack and go through the United.
Yeah.
We'll visit that in November, but leave it.
I don't know. I'm kind of to the point of cutting it myself. We need to discuss it further. We need more information on the fire, the hydrant thing. What's your contractual services and fleet services, the $10,000?
I've been looking at and we've done this in the past, a GIS system that helps on maintenance.
GPS.
GPS system, yeah. And it,
Big black box.
Yeah, a little black box, and should help us to, for Efren, be able to know, which vehicles are up for service, and the kind of the underlying thing on it is that the city used it for this in the past, was to be able to prove somebody was somewhere, whether it's a police car doing a patrol or a trash truck dumping your trash, and somebody says, well, I missed my trash this week. Well, drove down your alley and stopped in front of it, so we don't follow that.
Harrisman has did that
That's-
years ago.
I mean,
There was
I-
some benefit to it.
I think it's good. I've looked at about 4 different systems, and haven't found one that's just a slam dunk, but I think they're all kind of about the same.
This is in our budget to create, but it's our budget to approve. LEDCA has not submitted their budget yet on page 20, but they hadn't originally talked a couple years ago about hiring part-time people. I would not be in favor of approving that budget at this time. So I'd like to see them cut that back to current.
Of course, that's our reimbursement item. So the main thing is that the bottom line balances with what we get reimbursed from them for. This is just,
We don't approve their
just,
budget.
we'll approve it, but this will be hinging on what their actual costs are going to be. This really doesn't change a whole lot from year to year, but it will offset with what, for instance, payroll. We're going to pay a paycheck out of our payroll system to the economic development guy, and then they'll write us a check back for that and whatever else that we included in on that check.
Do we approve their budget?
No.
Never mind.
It's, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, we do.
It is an
It'll be in there.
auxiliary budget. but
You'll
it's-
approve it.
It's not included in your
As do
package.
we be in a,
It'll be when we add the LEDCA, LEDCP, 08
Auxiliary budget in the back, but I did not put those in this copy because we're not through working on
if they want to get my vote when they submit their budget, I'm not going to submit it.
it. Right, 90, actually, Mike sent me a budget this afternoon to look at it, and I really hadn't studied it, but he reduced that 90 salary down to 60, what the board approved.
Page 22, emergency management. This has been a discussion for many years. It's one that I've always watched closely. I understand the reason for it. I'm fully supportive of that. I do have a question that was brought up in the expenditures of machines and equipment. We do buy a new computer, if not yearly, every other year. I'd like to know what's happened to the old ones and why we have to have so many computers. I get it, we have to do storm sirens. I'd like to, as you sit down with your departments and go through the spiel of cutting expenses, this would be one, even though they're minor. I've over the years watched that expenditures and just some of that, just think we need to look at. Residential collection. Anybody else have any specific thing before we move on to capital outlays? All right, moving down the list, page 32, fiscal year ending 2023, police cruisers, we do want to look at that. As we go down this list, if y'all want to discuss anything, I'd like to see more on a presentation on an individual item. This is a big ticket item. Instead of just kicking it around, I'd like to get some direction on it. I'd like to have a specific conversation about the fire department and this truck or alternate trucks. I'd like to know some alternates. I'd like to know some justification for this one. And I'd like to have a full-blown session on that item.
I agree.
Refuse, heavy equipment. We do need to talk about track loader and scraper at some point. We can't keep pushing that down the road and end up needing a scraper and a track loader at the same time. Our scraper's working, our track loader's working beautifully, but it is something that will need addressed in the future, unless anybody has an immediate concern. EMS, they're in here, they got what they. Licensing enforcement, y'all are good on pickups now?
Yes, did buy one over the price, out of mileage truck.
Side loaders, we're fixed on that price. We're gonna get that trash truck, right, we're just gonna pay for it, yeah.
Should be January or something.
How are we doing on the other ones besides curiosity, they're down, broken, or whatever?
Where do we start? They got some parts in today and y'all got it working?
Yeah, we had to take it to B and C. The way they set those up, it's kind of got a weld on the top, and none of us weld good enough to even try to mess with it, so we took it in and fixed it.
How many side loaders do we own?
How many side loaders do we own? Actually, 6.
How many side loaders do we have operational?
1, we 2 tomorrow.
What's the status of the other 4?
1 we're waiting on a pump, is over in Morton. There's 1 still at Inland, they said they can't find a reservoir for it. The other one
That's
has,
the wrecked one at Inland,
Yeah.
correct? That they say is still good and they fixed it?
they say they can't test it until they get this reservoir that they just can't find.
Hydraulic reservoir?
Huh?
The hydraulic reservoir?
The
Coolant.
coolant reservoir.
Coolant reservoir.
Yeah, so call them up and say, bring it back.
So one's at Inland, one's,
And Morton at 3M or,
But the engine's good, they tested the engine.
they say they really can't test it until they get this reservoir.
That's not
They
what
say it would turn over and
the
everything.
insurance told us they
Well,
said the
no,
engine was fine.
Yeah,
So if the engine's bad, we gotta go back to the insurance company.
yeah.
So they didn't pay us enough.
is this wrecked truck gonna be able to work after all of this? Insurance is fixing something or just sending it back to us?
They're apparently gonna repair it.
That truck's no. So we have 1 working, 1 coming back tomorrow. Which one's coming back tomorrow?
The one that we got from Smire, the tan one.
Optimus Prime?
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, it needed one of the arms are bent, causing the carriage to go up sideways, and that's when they're dropping in. So got that straightened out, got parts in. DNC is getting 1 part on there. We'll put the bushings in the morning. It'll be ready to go. Morton is trying to find a pump. It's like everything else, trying to find parts.
That's for the 4th truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then the other one, we have crank sensor issue. Something in there is tearing crank sensor.
And where is it being worked on?
We hadn't sent it anywhere. We're gonna send it to Morton, But we were gonna do it until he got our other truck back. We're trying to,
And the last one?
and which one was it? That, the glitch, it's just having some engine problems. Marcelo came and checked it out, and he said he's gonna come back and look at it again.
And the new one arrives
So, in January.
Well, we have a new one running.
Yeah.
The other new one is running, it's bringing in 10 tons every trip, so we're,
We need a new one, and hopefully then we'll have a spare or two that you're
Yeah.
gonna keep. We need to get those fixed so we don't have trash trouble. Roll off, or what's the deal with the roll off y'all got in the future?
Oh, we need to replace, one of those is pretty bad out there at the collection station. It's high usage, but I like the collection station. It's really helping our alley. We don't have anywhere near as bad alley.
So why are we waiting 2 years to buy that roll off to replace? You have a roll off 2024. Why is it broke? You would wait 2 years.
Oh, I just haven't pushed it over there yet, but I think it's something we need. It's not very much money.
You don't pay for buying another roll off.
Buy it a lot. It's just
All of Public Works, I guess, you've got. Bucket truck, I need to be sold on that, I think, but small maintainer, will you give us a report of you've leased one, which was a brilliant idea to see if it worked before we spent $160,000? What's the what's the report on the leased, how's the small machine working?
we are probably about 3/4 of the way done with town, and it's only been a little over a week.
And it's working right?
Yeah.
Way
It's-
better.
Yeah.
So is it something that we need, or do we just lease it once a year, and how much did it cost to lease it?
Was it 5?
$5,000 per month.
Yeah. But he'll be done with all the alleys and every roads before that month, so.
I think that they probably gave us kind of a sweet deal on it, because I think they like to sell it to us.
It's not something we'll just call them every 6 months, say, hey, bring that to us.
We could, be good, and that's what they do.
Probably could.
You can lease them when I was like that.
You've got the alleys done, when's the next time you're gonna do them, after a rain?
After the rain.
That may be something.
That-
Do you want to buy
That's-
it? This thing is the cat's ass, it's what we need, but, do we buy it, or do we just lease it as we need it?
And it's 5,000 per month.
It's a little small grader, but this month was 5,000 for the month. To get it.
We'll see what happens after it rains and then see what it does.
I think we can keep it, getting at least, I just lease it for that, put that into. You might put some money in that line item for lease equipment and public works for streets, so. Because if we can get it and do that every quarter, if we can do it every quarter, and then we spend $20,000 a year leasing it, I don't know that we can own it for that.
No, it was a pretty sweet deal. It got messed up, at least it was so cheap.
So, with more investigation on that, but not ready to purchase that?
No.
We want to look at leasing it for a little while longer term. Pool, parking lot, what's the status of that?
Got a quote of, did I write that? 240,000. I mean,
Are we getting pressure from the church?
no, but they're kind of hard in that sense. I think at the first when we opened, we had lots and lots of lifeguards working, so that's some parking. That parking lot's full, and we've been using the church. I don't think it really puts them in a bad position, but we're really imposing. So I just wonder if maybe, would it be out of line for us to work out a lease with them to just lease part of the parking lot?
As you'll remember, there was initial designs of more parking, and we cut it to save some costs. I think we're gonna see how it goes. It's a lot of money for a seasonal deal. I think if we ever look at adding structures there, we're most definitely gonna have to address this, but
Well, have we exhausted all that, the 750,000 for that?
Well, we've spent more than our bond money on that park in the swimming pool. But that's a reimbursement grant. And we haven't got the money yet, but they're gonna wire us $750,000 that is a reimbursement for part of what we paid to build the pool. That's the way that grant works. So basically, that money's pretty clear to do what you want to do with it.
There is the discussion of so if you'll remember, of the $750,000 we paid for the pool with the bond, we got $750,000. We spent approximately, best I can remember, about $200,000 landscaping and different various equipment. So there's a balance of $500,000 that was for parks. Now, whether that's, we need to go spend that on parks, or that's just gonna go into the general fund to offset and help pay for the pool for the next 15 years. That's a discussion y'all need to have. Do y'all want to use more of that parks grant money for park activities? Or do y'all just want to leave it in the general fund to future stuff?
I think the responsible thing would be to put it, if we don't use it for the pool, if we use it for the park, is, you know.
We do have a big grant coming up possibly with the cost share, and then another one with Crescent Park.
And that money could be used to match this other.
You know, I agree. I think we need to do some stuff. I don't know that we need to go spend $250,000 on a parking lot yet for a 3-month deal. What's your thought, buddy? I would rather go spend it at a park and go, keep it on the side for when the Methodist Church gets mad at this and says you can't park.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
And I think Mitch is right, most of the hard churches are employees.
And it's
And I think we're gonna cut that back down.
Yeah, it'll thin down. I knew it was gonna be really heavy at the first, because basically I gave them the directive to be safe, all hands on deck. Yeah, I didn't want them thinning out. But now, toward the end of the year, you start having camps and things like this, and the kids, man, they get worn out too toward the end of the year, so you start dropping the numbers.
I think we need to always keep in mind we got that money, and then maybe we need to dedicate some parks. I don't know that we just need to go out and spend it this year, but, you know, we need to keep some, because we may have to add to this parking lot sooner or later, but I don't think it's immediately.
I'm not getting any pressure.
I think we really need to evaluate, our parks look like crap. I think we need to look at this water bill. It may be time to replace some playground equipment, or buy the $9,000 slide, or, you know, get some of what we have looking better. I think we'd all be interested in seeing some park improvements reasonably. You know, how can we spend $20,000, $30,000 and make a splash? Would y'all be interested in that? Very much. Get us a park plan. Pick up the wastewater's in there. Water and wastewater, let's combine these. Meters are we've agreed to that. That's just a cost we've agreed to do already. You say this water tower expense is not needed.
I don't think we need that, but, I mean, everything costs so much money, and we've got some needs like the flume grinder and lift stations. I'd say we probably ought to look at the flume grinder and a lift station probably in this next fiscal year. But that's just kind of shooting from the hip.
So basically what Mitch told me earlier, he'd like to leave, even though we may not need the water tower repair, he'd like to leave that money there to dedicate to some water, wastewater stuff. Here's the issue Mike can speak on more that's not in here that we do need to address. I don't know how we necessarily budget this, but it needs discussed now. So our water transmission line is our well field's 17 miles away. It comes up about 5 miles to the ground storage tank north of town. That's a 1 million gallon, 1.5 million gallon. Well, ground storage tank in the Sand Hills, how much is that? A million?
I believe that's 1.5.
No, in the Sand Hills? It's 1.5. No,
1.5 is the booster.
it's what?
500,000
It's
at
half.
the Sand Hills,
Half.
1.5 at the booster.
We have a 500,000 gallons up there. The water pumps to the gravities to town. Hopefully with our underground line replacement, we eliminate those major problems. The issue that's come up, Mike can speak to it more, Lubbock County is officially abandoning Bailey County Field or proposed abandonment.
Whenever I visited with Orbit Spears 3 weeks ago, what they're doing is they're gonna start trimming off of it, which they already have. We've already seen them doing that. But what they're gonna try to do is stop using it completely and let it re-infuse. See whether that will help them in any way. But now they're already down 2 days a week. That line's not charged.
What is our ground storage tank at the pump station in town? 1.5?
1.5.
So we have 1.5 million gallons in town. The water field's full. Underground line breaks, half our wells go offline. We have 1.5 million gallons in town. We use 50 million gallons, and the calculator's not big enough. How much, Mike, do you know off the top of your head of what a daily water is? It's 1.5 million. Let's just say
1 million.
1.7 is what we're running now in the summer. Average, I would say, is 1.499. I mean, we don't have enough in that tank to carry us more than probably 22 hours.
We have enough storage in town that if we have a line break or a major issue, we have 22 hours of water. Lubbock County's down 2 days a week, scheduled to go more offline. Lubbock County's going to shut off our emergency water sooner or later. Hopefully, they'll find a solution to do that. It is imperative that we build more ground storage to at least get us through the weekend. We need 3 million gallons, 3 to 5 million gallons of ground storage tank in Littlefield to be able to get through. If we don't have emergency water, when we've had all these hellacious problems out here, we've always been able to turn on Lubbock water. That's no longer possibly an option. And so we have to build more ground storage tank immediately. I would like to look at us to build 3 to 5 million gallons of storage, or 3.5 million will get us to 5 million gallons. Keep this tank we have, right? And add 3 million to it possibly, whatever's kind of, I don't know what size tanks come in, but to try to get us 3 to 4 days of storage. To do that, 3 million, it's $1 million per million.
I'm guessing about $1 a gallon.
We don't have permanent.
Capacity of the existing
Yeah. I got
water
five
right
of them,
now.
but they're really bad.
What's our water tower storage?
150 and 75.
250,000 gallons.
Mm-hmm.
250,000 gallons?
Yeah.
So another
On top of
on
the,
top of the ground. So we have 24 hours of water.
No, that big Wildcat tank is how big?
Mm-hmm.
How big is the Wildcat tank? Is
I
it
think
one?
that's 150,000 gallons.
No, I mean, not the Wildcat.
William Jennings, 75.
The one on Sunset is bigger than that. It's like,
75.
I'm gonna say it's close to, it should be closer to like half of them. The one on Sunset,
the Wildcat.
yeah, the Wildcat tank. It's bigger than
One-
150,000.
All of ours, books and the stuff from Ron Perrin's, 150.
So as y'all get a plan for our next meeting, let's find out capacity of what we have and capacity of what we need and some cost estimates of what that's going to be. It's going to require either us writing a check to pass a bond, it would be better to pass a bond. But in that, our lift stations, we've kicked this can for 10 years, haven't we, Michael? These lift stations, our main lift station, Laguna lift station, are major problems that we keep patching. If we're going to pass a $3 million bond to put a ground storage in, do we need to consider drilling and going ahead and drilling 2 more wells? We have to have 1,200 gallons 24 hours a day. If we have 10 wells, correct, Terry? 10 wells? Okay. 10 wells? Once the 2 new get on, we have 10 wells. If we have 10 wells, they average more than this, but say 2,000 gallons a minute. In essence, we're going to run we're running 6 of our wells nonstop in rotation. We need a plan of, do we need to start going ahead and talking about well number 1, 3, and 4 additional, and ground storage tank, and then tying in some lift station repairs. Part of this, with this new water guy, he may have some direction on that if we can get him, supposedly get him hired, I don't know. But that's imperative that I think we start looking at.
Well, absolutely.
And so we need to bond that, though keep in mind the water meter replacement comes off 2024. By the time we pass bonds, make payments, it's very possible Andrew thinks that we may have 1 year that we have to make a payment out of pocket, but we may be able to keep this water replacement of $176,000 to service a $200,000 bond payment or something. So, you know, this is a 15, 20-year project probably. So, you know, let's just say $5 million times 20 years plus interest. Who knows what interest is now? That's the scary thing. What we also need to talk to our ninja that does the bond stuff and ask him what rates are looking like on municipal rates so that we have an idea. But on a 20-year bond, 20 years, it's $250,000 a year if we do 20 years. So I mean, this is going to be a big payment.
Well, most cities, the big cost they've got, that they pay out, that it's a big, well, got a bond that you're paying on is utility.
I get it, but that's not good business either. I mean, we need to fix what we need, but I don't want to be in perpetual debt. But this is critical.
Well, as we grow, I mean, you've seen what has happened, you know, I mean, with the milk plant out there, you got that truck washout thing, and, you know, potential businesses and stuff coming in, you know, hotter weather and stuff like that, and, you know, that is something that we definitely need to consider. Not just, you know, it's a long-range plan, it's for the future. I know for a fact out there at the milk plant, you know, whenever we lose water, they shut down. And what they're looking at as far as lost production and stuff, they are talking about building their own tank, just a surge tank, just for that particular reason also.
That would be good business on their part. I mean, they are a big part of this community, but on the other hand is they're not in the city limits, and we're going to do the best to supply them water as they can. They may need to get them some alternative safeguards in place too. Even if they said, hey, we'll build y'all a tank, it still doesn't, there's, just like when we had that water leak, it doesn't help when the whole system's down. So they may need to look at that, but we need to do the best we can to try to supply them consistent water during the downtime. So that's a big project to start working on, but that needs fixability. So that would encompass, for now, I think we can leave that $100,000 in there, but that needs to be, we need to try to get that
We
together.
put together some kind of a bond package for some ground storage tanks, wells, lift stations, and what else?
This fire truck and was a big one that you're asking for, looking down the road. We need to know some options and costs, and we need to have some real data on that.
Might be a separate, they would probably want to do that as a separate, if we did finance it, we want to do a separate bond.
Oh, you're talking about bond. I thought you were talking about budget. Oh, yeah.
And the thing about the bond is, you know, it's like, that's a hard thing to put in a budget is a bond payment. You don't know what your bond's going to look like.
That's what you're doing over the next 2 weeks, is you're figuring out how much it's going to cost.
And they're pretty quick about figuring out how to spend your money.
I hope we get some answers. Yeah. Any other hot topics? If not, 2 weeks, let's have a budget. When's this got to be adopted?
Oh, it doesn't, you could do it, it could adopted late in September, but we try to get it in August, but the thing that throws you for a loop is the future taxation laws and changes, the software for determining the rates, and I can't get together a good number yet.
When do you expect that number to be able to review our tax rate?
I would think it could possibly get it to us in a couple of weeks, or a week of the earliest.
So we'll set another budget workshop to address all of these projects that we want to explore further. August the 9th, does that work for everybody? I make a motion, we have a budget workshop on August 9th at 6 o'clock.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries. Any else direction on the budget?
Will we have a more complete, look on our budget here?
Oh, yeah, we'll get our auxiliary funds and all that kind of a little more ironed out. And I've got to look at the timing, because it could be that we may need to put some record votes in there to propose the tax rate and all. I'll blend that in with our budget first, but it is super complicated and tricky. And
We'd like to see a reprint of the budget after you've done, let's keep this, I mean, you know what you've made your notes, but we'd like to see a reprint of this. We'd like for you to revisit with the department heads, honing down some expenses and getting numbers on all these projects. So we can
5:30 or on the 9th or 6th.
stay there. That's what we always do. That's a lot of work for y'all, but I'm confident you can get it done.
I'm confident we'll be.
Very good. If nothing further, we have covered our agenda and we are adjourned.